everyone, I'm Bianca. I'm a third of the YA room and I'm here today to bring you my February wrap up. So I read 7 books in February, which is pretty good seeing as it's quite a short month, and I'm really excited to talk to you about them today. So the first book I read in February was These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. This was actually a January book of the month for the YA room. It's nothing like leaving a book till the last minute. It's a Romeo and Juliet retelling set in 1920 Shanghai, and I really enjoyed it. I'm a huge fan of Romeo and Juliet retellings, and this one was definitely one of the more interesting that I've ever read. It follows 2 rival blood gangs in Shanghai in the 1920s, dealing with each other's hate and also outside forces like British and communism as well. So I really enjoyed the different take on these characters. There was a lot of diversity. I had a lot of fun trying to pick out who was who, and I really loved Juliet's character as well. Usually in Romeo and Juliet, she's quite a passive, quiet character. We don't really get to see her perspective on things as such. And in These Violent Delights, she was fierce. I absolutely loved her. I wish we had more Juliets like her. I also feel like I learned a lot about Shanghai in the 1920s, the way that things were. It's a very specific time period. It was full of a lot of political upheaval that I had no idea about, so I really appreciated getting this little insight, even in a fictional book. I also really enjoyed the monster aspect. I wasn't expecting that at all. I love a good monster in a novel, and I thought it was a really interesting plot device to have Juliet and Roma work together. So the next book that I finished in February was The Boy from the Mish by Gary Lounsborough. This was one of my most anticipated reads for February for the entire year, and it did not disappoint. It was so good. So it follows a teenage Aboriginal boy called Jackson in the period between Christmas and New Year, where his auntie and all his cousins come to stay, and his auntie has brought another teenage boy, Thomas, to stay with them as well. So the core of this story is a love story. You follow Jackson and Thomas as they get to know each other, get to know more about themselves, dealing with their friends and the town and the racism as well. And it was just so beautifully done. I loved the focus on place as well. I found the characters really relatable as well. There was so much that I think anyone can recognize in their teenage years in this book. If you've been a teenager, you're going to relate to something in here. So I really enjoyed that aspect. Made me feel really connected to the characters. And I really adored the writing style as well. I think that Gary Lounsborough has such a raw and honest writing style. You are right in Jackson's head, and it was a really great experience. This book is just so wholesome. If you need a fast, beautiful read that's going to leave your heart feeling so full, I definitely recommend The Boy from the Mish. So the next book I finished in February was Words in Deep Blue by Kath Crowley. Set in a bookshop, and honestly, who doesn't love a book about books? It follows 2 characters, Rachel and Henry, as they each deal with a bit of upheaval in their lives and get to know each other again. And it was so beautifully written, and I loved it so much. I read it in almost one sitting. It was so gorgeous. I loved watching the characters grow and develop and change before my eyes and just become happier versions of themselves. But in saying that, this book was also so heartbreaking at times, but I really feel like it spoke to what makes people people, and it was just so beautifully done, and I really enjoyed it. So I also finished Found by Fleur Faris. This was a really fast-paced novel. Again, I could not put this one down. It follows a girl named Beth after her father's disappearance in a small Australian town, and she's suddenly thrown into this huge fight for her life. Someone's out to kill her, and she spends the book looking for her dad and discovering all these things about her parents that she didn't know. So one of the things that I really enjoyed was Jonah, the boyfriend. This wasn't quite a love story, but I really enjoyed that we got his perspective as well as Beth's when they're just starting out this new relationship and they sort of have their normal teenage dramas, but the throw in a murder, and it follows Jonah as he tries to deal with helping Beth because he loves her, but it was just delivered so differently to anything I've read before, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed getting to know both these characters and their relationship to each other. The next book I finished in February was The Camelot Betrayal by Kirsten White. This is the sequel to The Guinevere Deception. To think about that for a minute. I really love this series. I really love how the story was developed in this next book. I love getting to know the characters a bit more. I think they're great. They're great people to spend time with. It's quite an interesting one though. I find Guinevere to be a very quiet, passive character almost. She has a lot of insecurities and self-doubt that makes sense for her character. Objectively, it doesn't seem like she should be a great main character, but I really love reading about her. I don't know if that makes sense. I feel like reading these books is a very chill, relaxing time. There's something about the writing style and the characters that is just such a nice book to be in. Not that the stakes aren't high. Yeah, I don't know, there's just something about it that I really enjoy, and I really enjoyed the next installment and where the characters are going. It left us on a cliffhanger, so I'm very excited for the next book. So the next book I finished in February was A Vanishing of Griffins by S.A. Patrick. A Vanishing of Griffins is the sequel to A Darkness of Dragons. I read A Darkness of Dragons in 2019. It's the beginning of a middle grade fantasy series, and let me tell you, I absolutely loved A Darkness of Dragons so much. It follows a boy called Patch Brightwater who is a Pied Piper. So the magic system in this series is based on piping and flute songs, and it was just unlike anything I've read before. I loved the characters, I loved the world and the writing style. It was the book that I wish I'd written. So to say that I was excited for A Vanishing of Griffins is an understatement. And guys, let me tell you, it was so disappointing. Oh my god. I waited 2 years for this book and I had the highest expectations and they just weren't met. So that's not to say that I didn't enjoy Vanishing of Griffins. I did, but it felt like it had lost the magic of the first book. There was barely any piping, no magic. My boy Patch barely said a word. The characters all blended together for me. They just sort of became names on a page. Their dialogue sounded the same. So yeah, I will be reading the third one. I am looking forward to it, but I'll have much lower expectations this time. So the last book I finished in February is our February book of the month, The Gilded Ones by Namina Fawn. Shiny. Love it. I really enjoyed The Gilded Ones so much. I kind of dived in blind. I knew it was a West African fantasy feminist story. That's all I knew. It's such a page turner. I absolutely loved the writing style and the world. It's full of some amazing, strong female characters. My favourite part was the plot development and the pacing. I feel like both are perfect. The things you learn and the characters learn about the story and their world is just so perfectly done, and it just kept me gripped, and it was just so beautiful, and I cannot wait for the next one. So that was all the books that I finished in February. Let me know down below what you finished in February, something that you super enjoyed, whether you've read any of these books as well. And I will see you next month. Bye!